Hello everyone, welcome back to our General Ledger tutorial series. In today's episode, I will show you what steps you need to follow to enable general workflow in the Oracle Fusion application for any new company that you set up from the scratch. In this episode, we are not just enabling workflows, we will dive into different components of approval workflow, including approval tasks, stages, participants, and rules in Oracle Fusion application. While I will be using the journal approval workflow as an example, by the end of this video, you will have the skills to analyze and understand any approval workflow, whether it's for invoices, purchase orders, or more in Oracle Fusion application. I am Siva, an Oracle ACE and Certified Implementation Professional. If you are ready, let's go. Here are the 3 simple steps we will follow to enable workflow for manually created journals in the General Ledger module. For today's hands-on demo, I will enable journal workflow for the new ice cream company that we set up from scratch in episode 2. You can find all the links to my General Ledger tutorial series in the description below. Let's begin with the first step, which is to enable journal workflow functionality for the ledger we created for our new ice cream company. To get started, I already logged into my Oracle Fusion application, and now I will navigate to Setup and Maintenance. Make sure to select Financials as your offering, and then navigate to General Ledger functional area. The task we are interested in is Specify Ledger Options. Before clicking on the task, make sure you select the scope, in my case, Arun Primary Ledger. I'll go ahead and select Specify Ledger Options. I'll scroll a little down. Under Journal Processing section, there is a checkbox that you need to tick to enable journal workflow for our new ledger. I'll go ahead and tick this box. That's it. I'll go ahead and save my changes. We just completed step number 1. In step number 2, we will configure Oracle Fusion application to require journal approval at the journal source level. Specifically, for our scenario, we want to ensure approval is mandatory for manually created journals. To complete this step, I will search for the task Manage Journal Sources. And this is the task I'm looking for, Manage Journal Sources. I'll click on it. On this page, I will search for the journal source manual. And this is the journal source manual. It looks like by default, journal approval is required for manual journal source. We don't have to do anything in this case. Enabling it is pretty easy. Double click on this row and you can check this box. After ticking this box, you can save your changes. We just completed step number 2. Before we dive into the third and final step, which is reviewing the out-of-box approval rules, let's take a moment to understand how a document approval workflow setup is done in Oracle Fusion application. The document in question could be anything like an invoice, purchase order, or a journal. Let's break down how this whole approval process is set up in Oracle Fusion. In Oracle Fusion, the approval process for documents like journals, invoices, and purchase orders is structured around tasks, stages, and rules. Here is a simple breakdown. Each approval task consists of stages like header and line. These stages group approval rules logically. All approval actions within one stage must be completed before moving on to the next stage. Within each stage, we have participants. Participants or assignees are the people or roles involved in a stage. Approvals can be routed to participants in 4 different ways. Single, which means one level of approval. Serial, one after the other. Parallel, multiple participants can review the document simultaneously. And lastly, FI, for your information, participants can review or comment on the approval document but don't affect the decision. Participants are determined based on the approval rules. Approval rules determine who approves a transaction based on conditions. Rules follow if-then logic where conditions must be true to apply. Example, if a requisition amount is less than $500, approve automatically. Now that you got some background on how the approval process is set up in Oracle Fusion, let's move from theory to action. I will demonstrate how all these steps are configured in the Oracle Fusion application for our out-of-the-box journal approval. To navigate to the journal approval setup page, I will search for the task Journal Approval. From the search results, I will click on the task Manage Journal Approval Rules. Next, I will search for our journal approval task. I'll start by typing FIN-G and click on the right arrow. The task we are looking for is FIN-GL Journal Approval Task. I'll select it. After a few seconds, my workflow configuration page opened. What you are seeing here is Oracle BPM, Business Process Management, the tool used to configure workflows in the Oracle Fusion application. And in particular, this is the out-of-box approval task that gets triggered in the background when you submit a journal after enabling approval at the ledger and source level. In the interest of time, let's focus only on the core components of the workflow, starting with task configuration that we just opened. Task configuration houses the entire workflow setup as you are seeing here. On the General tab, you have the basic information about the workflow. Next, we will move on to stages. To access stages, I will click on the Assignees tab. We discussed earlier that assignees or participants are housed within a stage. Where do you see a stage here? To access stage, I need to click on this box. As you can see, after I clicked here, our journal stage information is listed here. There is only one stage for our delivered journal approval process. If you search for Invoice approval task configuration, you can see multiple stages. Now let's talk about assignees or participants housed within a stage. In a workflow, an assignee or participant is the person or group who receives the approval notifications. There are 4 types of participants: single, serial, parallel, and FYI. To identify the type of each participant in our journal workflow setup, I can simply hover over them. For example, if I hover over this participant, you can see this one is a FYI participant, this one is a single type participant, and this one is a parallel participant, and finally this one is a serial participant. Most of the participants in this workflow setup are disabled. How do I know it? Because the icon is disabled, unlike serial participant which is enabled. Another way to find if participant is disabled, I can select a participant, navigate to Advanced tab. Here you can see Ignore Participant Property, which basically ignores this participant during evaluation. Now let's see how these participants are determined. It's all based on approval rules. To access approval rules, I will select the active participant and click on the diamond icon to navigate to approval rules. These are the approval rules that determine our serial participants. Approval rules are logically grouped using approval rule sets. Rules are evaluated using if-then logic. For example, this rule states that if journal approval is enabled at ledger level and the ledger name is AU Council Primary Ledger and the maximum journal line amount is less than 101, approver is determined by supervisory hierarchy. Approval is required, and how many levels of approval is required? 1 level of approval. For example, if I submit the journal, my journal is routed to my supervisor for approval. Once he approves, journal will be automatically approved. That's it for today, folks. In today's episode, we went through high-level overview of how the components of the approval workflow come together to handle documents like journals, invoices, and purchase orders. But here is the big question. How can you identify which approval rule got fired at runtime? Don't miss my next episode where we will dive into exactly that.